Back to the Weekend Warrior Show recap podcast. I'm Ty from the Unemployed Architects. Today I'm sitting down with Kendrique Coats. Second time that you've been a guest on the podcast. So we were actually just playing some music, and you were telling me that you aren't able to practice quite as much. So why is that?
It's been great during the pandemic. It was something to do, but I think I hope we're kind of moving towards the end of all of this. Life has gotten back to somewhat normal, and so activities have picked up. And so as far as practicing vocals, life's gotten on the way, getting involved in different things, and so not able to do it as much as I could.
Do you still play guitar a fair amount, or
I usually play guitar maybe once or twice a week, and I just kind of go through the same 8 songs that I know.
Well, yeah, I think that's always a good method. I think some people, when they're playing, they just want to learn something new every time, and then nothing really sticks to them ever. So it's good to go over the things that you're good at first, and then kind of. And I could tell you can play those bar chords. That's a step.
It's getting there.
It's definitely a step in the right direction for sure. And anyway, and you were showing me Harry Styles' song.
Harry Styles, the Adorn song. There's just I went down the rabbit hole of looking for acoustic covers on YouTube, and I found Harry Styles, and I think people had talked about him, but I was like, I didn't
isn't he from a different band? Wasn't he one of the...
I don't know. I know he's with a... I don't know if he's with a band, but I don't know if he was...
I think he had I'm just going to look it up, because if I don't...
Yeah, I don't remember, but I know, Ooh. Oh, there's...
Yeah, I was playing that song, so... the Meet Me at Our Spot song, that's a new one.
But I don't know if he was with anybody else. I know for the NPR...
I thought he had One Direction. That's what I was thinking. It was kind of a boy band type thing, and he's been... he performed on SNL with this band, and it had more of a rock kind of...
Yeah.
And I thought it was cooler than I would have expected, but so Harry Styles from One Direction. But anyway.
Never knew.
Yeah. What else you been listening to? Anything?
Harry Styles. And there's another artist that I found, Maggie Rogers, which she's kind of there's a folk influence, and I think I was telling you about how I found her was Pharrell was doing some type of
I've seen that before. You told me about it, and I didn't put it together that that was who it was that you were telling me about till way later. But go ahead. Sorry to interrupt.
He was the one they were at the School of Music or whatever it was called, and Maggie was up and she started playing the song, and Pharrell's just kind of sitting in his chair, kind of stoic, not trying to give his emotions away, but he was like, "Yo, this is unique. There's nothing out like you." And
was one of the things he said, I don't really have much I can coach you on, because
so she pretty much hit it out the park. And I think the song's called Alaska, and it's got a groovy, vibey feel to it, but her background was, I believe, in folk. Was her background, and then she kind of started developing and trying out different things. Yeah.
That's cool.
The other person, Ben Howard's another one that I've gotten into him. I tried to learn some of his songs, but he's just
he's got real crazy fingers. And he does weird barring with his pinky, and he's always in open tuning, which makes things. He has one song by him I like a lot. It's called One Love. You know that one?
I've heard that one. Yeah.
Or Only Love. I'm sorry, Only Love. That's one of my favorites. There's a live performance on some radio station, and it's a really cool sound. And he has a lot of just solid songs. I wouldn't say that they're my favorite by any means, but there's some that really stick out, and then everything else is good. It's not every song of his blows me away, but you can put it on and you're just oh, this is always you're always going to get something pretty solid. It's not going to be you're not going to hear very many bad songs, which is, I think that's a tough thing to do as a musician, is come to songs that everything you're putting out is at least better than average. I feel that's a tough spot.
Kind of like Chris Brown. Chris Brown has been making music for, it seems, 150 years, and I don't think he's missed on a song. Every single one of his songs, there are some songs I like better than others, but Chris Brown is just, you can see just his evolution as an artist, and where he is now, and everything is just solid. His production, the way he's grown, the way he develops, it's all good.
I'm not as familiar with the Chris Brown, but
Might have to start playing those at your show.
yeah, I should probably. There's a lot of, it's funny. I play 4-hour sets a lot. 4 or 5. I could cover 5 hours of music. I could probably, if I really stretch, maybe 6 if I like really did some deep cuts of the covers and all my originals and all that stuff. But no matter what, it never fails. At every show I play, there's somebody that's like, "Hey, can you play this song?" And I'm like, "Nope." Just like, airball. Like, I try to mix up my set list. It's not like I stick to one genre specific, but it's so hard to just do you can't cover every song. Some people can, some people can just be like, "Oh, I heard that song once, let me give it a shot." And I'm not that. I have to spend months and months to learn songs. Like, it takes me a long time. So it's funny that happens still, like, all the time.
That was at Crafted that one night. The older gentleman, he was like, "Hey, can you play?" And you're like, "No, but I think you played Elvis."
Right. So I played something like either similar era or similar genre. Yeah. But there's so many misses that I have in my. And I mean, part of that's I like what I like. I'm kind of I'm not. I wish I was a little more open-minded in music, but you can't really force that. Whatever moves you. So it's weird that I get so. And I'm a lot more broad than I used to be. But when I'm playing a lot of these, like, I play hits, I play, like, for the covers, I'm doing, like, if I play Tom Petty, I'm going to play the popular Tom Petty songs that everybody knows, because it's like how I look at covers, there's, like, maybe 3 or 4 different things. So how easy is the song? So that's one. Well, first is, do I love the song? If I love the song, then yeah, I'll learn it. I'll spend that, because it's a big time cost if you're learning a tune. But okay, if I love the song, then yeah, I should learn it. But still, even then, it's like some songs I just like to listen to, because if you kind of ruin a song to listen if you spend so much time learning it and then playing it over. Like, there are songs that I still really like to play, but I don't really listen to them as much as I used to, because I've just worn them out. So that's something to think about. The second thing, how easy is the song? Can I learn it quickly? Are there a lot of lyrics to memorize? I'm not an iPad guy. I sit and I have to memorize words. So I mean, if it's pages and pages of words, it's pretty daunting. So that's a factor. The other factor, will people know this song? Not just one random guy in a bar. Like, if I play this song, what's my reward from the audience? Like, is it mass appeal? And I'm not saying I don't do deep cuts once in a while, but a lot of the deep cuts are the ones that I like really enjoy. I'm going to spend the time on the ones that I actually like. And I like Tom Petty a ton, but it's like I could, and I do what's called the Tom Pedley, or what we call it's like 10 Tom Petty songs. Yeah. But he has so many hits that are just my favorite songs already, so I don't really have to do as much of a deep dive. But and then the other thing would be, the genre. It's just like, is it something a little bit out of, what I'm already doing? Is it a good thing that I cover 10 Tom Petty songs? I don't, I could I could have maybe spread that out a little bit from other songs or other artists of the era. But I really like Tom Petty, so I don't know. That's just kind of how I look at it. How long it's going to take me to actually learn the song? That's a big time investment. So
there's a lot of time. I mean, even when you think about playing a song, I remember back when I first started playing guitar, the very first song that I tried to play was Dave Matthews' Number 41.
Yeah,
and that probably wasn't the best beginners.
But I don't know. The first one I ever learned by the same artist was called Satellite, and it's like this crazy finger.
That is a crazy one.
And I looked up the tabs, and I was like, I could probably figure this out. Like, one of my buddies, Eric Davis, shout out Eric Davis. He had been playing guitar like maybe a few months longer than I had, or a year longer than I had, and he was showing me how to read tabs. And I had this old guitar, and I learned the song using all one finger to do it, which is a pretty common thing. I teach guitar, so it's like not like something that sounds silly. It's funny to think about from my perspective, because it's like, of course you're going to use all your fingers. You never see a guy playing guitar that's just like, but you're not knowing what you're looking at when you have no like.
Right.
But anyway, and that definitely wasn't the song that I should have started with, but it's the song that I wanted to play, So with number 41, it's like, yeah, it may not have been the best, but it got the guitar in your hands, which is, which makes it the best song.
There was that song, so number 41, and then I tried to learn Craig David, 7 Days. You remember that song?
I don't.
It's like an R&B.
I don't remember that.
It's kind of like, on day one, took you to a da-da-da-da-da. I can't remember the lyrics off the top of my head, but that was the second one. And I started looking at all these tutorials, and it was just like hours and hours and hours of going through these tutorials, and then I was just like, you know what, let me learn something easy. So I think I learned Kings of Leon. I can't remember the song. See, I'm terrible with memory. But it was just an easy, there was an A chord, a G, I think an E in there. There was like 4 chords in there.
Right.
But
which is,
to your point of like, how much, if you're going to have to spend all this time learning a song and then you have other things to do during the week, like, is it really a great return on your investment? Probably not if you have to spend 6 hours trying to learn a song.
Yeah.
And the lyrics.
And it's a different thing because it's not like I just have to be able to kind of play the song. It's like I have to like know it, I mean, not that I've never like BS'd a song a little bit live, but I mean, I like to have a good like the first time I've played it, I've probably put in like 15 hours or something crazy to kind of get it there. So it's like that it's just but again, never fails. I usually, my response usually is, I can only cover like 5 hours of music. So if it's not in that, because it's kind of, I don't know if it's I'm not trying to be like a dick or anything, but it's like, I want the person to know that like, I put a lot of time into the songs that I know, and I know a lot of songs, but I'm sorry that it's not, your pick is not one of the, 200 that I know, but I don't know. It's just a weird, it always happens. I wish I had something better to say, but it's like, I hate just saying no, like, no, I don't know that one.
Hey, just tell them follow you on social media, inbox you the song that they want to hear.
There you
Boom,
go.
So now you have a little plug.
New follower.
Exactly, man. Exactly. Say, you know what? I can't play that song, but hey, follow me on Instagram. Shoot me the message of songs that you want to hear.
Idea.
So next time I'm here, bam. So then
but then,
plug.
But then I, when I failed to learn the song,
then that's on you.
Exactly. So what I'm saying is that puts a lot of pressure on me to feel like I have to do something. But what I should say is, you just inbox me the song, I'll give it a listen. That's what I should say.
Boom.
Because then
no pressure.
No risk there. Just to listen to a song.
Yeah.
But 9 times out of 10, they're not even going to do that anyway. So, but it is a nice kind of positive response, which is something I'm, I think about. Like I want to, I don't want to put like a negative spin on anything when I'm talking to somebody for the first time, out as a musician, like trying to get people to. And if I can play something similar, that's always a good like, I can't play that, but I can do this, which is kind of at least bridges the gap a little bit. I don't know, but
true.
Anyway, so you're eating some was it chili? What kind of chili?
I tell you what, that chili, that might have been my best batch I've made. So what I made is every single week I make sweet potato chili, and I don't eat meat besides salmon maybe once or twice a week, and so I chop up my sweet potatoes, and it's similar to how most people make their chili. I just substitute it with sweet potatoes. And like I said, anything.
So you substitute like the ground beef part with the sweet potatoes?
Yep. And it
smelled very good. So yeah, Kendrick, when he got here, we were setting everything up. He's like, I brought some chili I'm going to eat real quick.
And that's not like the typical thing somebody brings like for a snack.
No.
Like I was telling Lo, I was like, people make fun of me because if I travel away from home or I'm gone for a couple hours, I'm taking my water, and I'm usually taking something to eat.
Yeah, I'm pretty ridiculous with my
the jug.
Yeah. Mine's like a weird, because you can't like hide this giant jug of water.
Right.
People see it. I feel like sometimes they think it's like some weird flex, like, yeah, I'm trying to. I don't know what they think. It's always awkward, and then you get people that are like, oh, do you drink that every day? And I'm like, I mean, I try. I don't really succeed a lot.
Right.
But I don't like using plastic bottles and like over and over, like drink one, throw one away, or in the recycle, drink one, recycle. So I just reuse this jug. I still am contributing to pollution to an extent because I usually don't use them for too long. Maybe a couple weeks or something. But you see your goal and you see where you're at with it, and it gives you something to kind of strive for, and you can visit. It's like a visible recognition. Like I need to get on and drinking more water.
It's tough, man. Especially like if you're ripping and running, or even if you're playing at a show. Like how much time in between sets or songs do you have time to actually?
Well, and it's a big thing with singing. I mean, obviously you got to have your vocal cords hydrated. So. That's another thing. I don't know if people are thinking like I'm like some tough guy, like bodybuilder kind of guy with trying to get his hydration in, or if they probably don't look at me and say, oh, he's probably a singer. I don't
You're
think
one of the bros.
Yeah. I think that's more
You're in the bro club.
The vibe that they get when they see me, and then I'm like embarrassed a little, but I just don't care ultimately. I just like. I roll my eyes a little, like, okay, well, you could have just not. It's something to talk about. People love to have something to talk about, I guess.
True.
But I don't know. It's kind of silly. I understand that it's silly. I do a lot of things that are maybe a little stupid.
But. I mean, I carry around my little. It's called a Bubba jug. And it's like a
giant one.
It's big enough people notice it.
Right.
So I can't like put it in my backpack. But it's like carrying around a gallon of water.
There's something different about a gallon, though. I don't know what it is. I mean, even if it's like I don't know. If yours is so big that it can hold a gallon, because how big is it?
I think it's a half a gallon.
Okay, so I mean,
it's big enough. Somebody at work asked me, he's like, hey man, what do you have in that jug? You bring coffee? And I was like, man, if you're drinking a half a gallon of coffee a day, I'm like, bro, like, but it's just water.
Right. I get I don't really drink, so people always ask to like at shows. They're like, can I buy you a drink? I'm like, no. Like, do you want water or something? I'm like, nah, I got my jug. And then they're like, is that just water? And I'm like, no, it's moonshine. Like, what?
A gallon of moonshine.
Yeah. Like, I don't know what. I never know what to say in those situations. I'm so awkward sometimes, but I try to keep it light. Try to keep it fun. I'm not socially. I'm not. I'm no expert on how to interact with people. I'm getting better. That's like.
Dude, I'm the same way. Like there would be situations. I think I was at the library the other day, and I told this joke to the guy sitting behind the counter, and it just like he didn't get it, and that may be the age difference because I think he's like 18, 19, 20, and I told a joke, around our age, right. And he's like, huh? And so there are times in situations where I can be kind of awkward, but
you I feel like you make an active effort to like go and talk to people, and that's like your personality. I don't have that gene. I'd probably, if I wasn't a musician, I would probably only have conversations like this, which I'm way more comfortable in, like a one-on-one with the a good friend or small group of people that I've known forever. We plenty to talk about always. I always have probably too much to say. People have a tough time shutting me up, but you put me in a situation like out at a bar or something like that, especially if I'm a musician, at least I have something to talk about. But
right.
If I'm just at a social event, like I just like do not feel comfortable. I immediately am looking at the door, like how can I get out of here? And I don't know what that is. You read the thing like, oh, I'm introverted and oh, I'm extroverted and all that. So obviously I think I would be on the introverted side of things. I don't have that like go out and talk to everybody, and I don't know. I wish I had that.
Right. It's kind of similar to, you ever get invited to graduation parties? And I always feel, no matter whose graduation party I go to, it is just always weird because there's a lot of people that you don't, typically in my experience, there's people that I don't know, and I'm like, man, do I want to really socialize today, or do I just want to, meet, greet, say, hey, I made it to your graduation party, give them the card, and then leave? Typically, that's my mindset going in. Is like, if I get invited to a graduation party,
who's graduating? That you're talking about when you're younger, or when are you going to graduation?
That's a good question. So when I was coaching athletes, I'd get invited to graduation parties, and no disrespect to any of the athletes that I coach, it was just I'm very shy. There's a shy side to me. So when I went to the graduation parties, I'm like, okay, can I find Joe Schmo, give him his card, say hey to his parents, stay for 5 or 10 minutes, and then leave? Just because it was that was an awkward situation for me, because a lot of people I don't know. So similar to you, how you said, if there wasn't any music to talk about, you'd be like kind of in this space where it's one-on-one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've been in many situations that are awkward.
But I don't know. It seems like you have that gear, though. I don't know that I have that gear even. Like, I mean, I can really, really force myself, but usually, like, I'll do the exact thing you're saying. I'm very, like, I have a goal. I'm going to go to this party. I'm going to drop off this thing. I'm going to say hey to 3 people. Then I'm going to get out of there. There'd be nothing that would stop me from doing that. As soon as I make that decision, there would be no side conversations. It would be like, if somebody tried to talk to me, I'd be looking at the door, like I said, trying to get out of there. I wish I was better at, like, but I don't know if that's just, a lot of times my mentality, I have this, like, weird hyper-focused mind where like, if I set a goal like that to get in and out, that's what I'm going to do. Mm-hmm. And that's not, like, I don't think that's how people normally are. I feel like, they just kind of roll with it.
I don't know. I'm sure there are probably a lot more people that kind of have that anxiousness, but they just don't speak about it, so we probably don't know about it.
Yeah, but, I mean, I know a lot of people do have that, but I don't know. It's weird being a musician and having it, because it's like part of there's like I don't want to say political, but there is a little bit of, like, you're putting out something. You're putting out You're playing the music, which that part can do just fine. I can go. Sometimes I do a thing where I won't take a break at a show because there's a lot of people there, and I feel like I'm gonna have to talk to people, and I don't know how I'm gonna do with it. So I'll just stay on stage for 3 hours straight. I did that the other night, Friday night at a show at Golden Fox Brewing in Decatur, and I played for 3.5 hours without taking a break, just straight through. And a lot of the songs I did were medleys, so it was like I'd start one and I'd do 4 to 10 songs, like, in a row right after it. And I don't even give the crowd time to react. So I don't know. There's something weird in my brain where it's like, I don't know if that's a good thing. I feel like people like it when you go out and talk to them and, like, have like a. Even if it's just, those generic questions, I get a little burnt out of the generic kind of, small talk stuff pretty quick. And I'm better at it than I used to be, because I used to just not even acknowledge that was even an option, and people would talk to me and I'd just be like a deer in the headlights most of the time. And then I always do the thing where, I'll be like, oh, what was your name? And they tell me, and forgot. Just forgot. They said it 2 seconds ago. And, and as somebody who's a musician trying to book themselves at shows all the time, is like, that'd be a good skill to have, would be to be able to remember somebody's name. Because, you talk to, like, a promoter or something like that, and the next time you see them, if you're like, oh, hey, Dave, you go up and you talk to them, and, you have a little rapport, you have a better chance of maybe being invited to maybe an event they're putting on, to perform or something. But I don't know. There's
just so much nowadays, in especially post pandemic, or if you want to, But I think there's just so much pressure on everybody, whether you're introvert, extrovert, ambivert.
I definitely noticed that right after, like, maybe in the middle, like after the shutdown, but then maybe a few months after that, there was a couple times I'd go hang out with some friends, and it seemed like there were so many lulls in the conversation. Like, people forgot how to talk to each other a little bit. And it seemed like it was everywhere. It wasn't just like I'm bad to begin with, but seemed like the people that are usually, like, solid at it kind of lost a little bit of that, because you're so isolated. It's such a weird.
One of my friends he's a teacher, and he teaches K through 5th grade, and he's just kind of described this evolution of actually seeing the kids pre-COVID to where now a lot of the kids went online, and so they're in front of computer screens for, we'll just say, 4 to 6 hours a day. And then now that kids are back in school, he said that he almost gets more of a respond and more focus when there is a screen involved into like their activities that they're doing. He's like, man, this is kind of crazy to see that I was teaching before and there wasn't much technology, and now kids are almost paying attention more with the technology versus not having it, which is kind of like, I think as a whole, not even just grade school, but even adults, you see it more to where people now don't want to go out. Or I shouldn't say all people, but there's a lot of people that would rather just stay home now because we've been in this for 2 years, and it's like, now I actually have that pressure of having to go out and actually socialize with people. So to hit back on your point of like having this pressure of being at shows and wanting to talk to people or having the need or feel like you need to talk to people, on the flip side of that, there are people that are just staying at home because they don't want to talk to anybody.
Yeah.
And again, that's not everybody. I'm sure there's still a lot of people that are going out and doing what they do, but I think that's one of the biggest things with this pandemic is it has changed from what I've seen how a lot of people communicate now. And I'm an in-person type of guy. Some people will text me, and it's almost like a chore sometimes to text, especially if there's a full blown out conversation. Like, yeah, I'd much rather be in person.
I don't ever do the full conversation.
It's hard,
sometimes Big D, because that's the only way I can talk to him. But I don't know. I mean, but still, I would catch him on the phone. We'd talk for an hour and a half, which I've been told by, Steve Holcomb.
Yeah.
He was telling me one time that, like, when I call, he gets a little bit, he doesn't always answer, and he gets, like, a little bit of anxiety because he knows it's going to be, like, a 30-minute to hour-long conversation. So it's like, that's a lot to ask of somebody. Not that I do it intentionally or, like, that I'm aware of it, but that's just, I'd much rather talk on the phone than just do texting. But a lot of people, especially nowadays, I think will lean on the text part of thing because it's not as much of an undertaking to have like even just a phone call, which is still not in person, which I still feel like I do prefer even that.
Right. It's I think it's just tough on everybody. I would say, me personally, I'm at the point where I like going to the gym is something that's part of my routine. So even when I go to the gym, there's a guy that I talk to. His name's Todd. Love him to death. And a lot of times we're talking about investing. Hey, where's your 401k at? Hey, what kind of investments are you making in the stock market? Where are your index funds? And so I think it may have been actually last week. And I had my mind was set on the gym. I'm like, I'm going to do this. I'm not going to let anybody interrupt me. And I saw him, and I was like, man, I was kind of torn between, like, do I really want to focus on the workout or talk to him? And I was like, you know what? It's more valuable to have this conversation with him because I can come back to the gym tomorrow. I may not see him again. And that's kind of where my mind is a lot of times with just friends and family is like, I'm going to make that extra effort in communicating.
But you do get something out of it. I mean,
that's the other thing.
It's not like, because you're not working out, you're getting nothing done. There is some, like, even after this conversation, I'll feel probably good, a little bit better for the whole rest of the day because, we talked, we connected. It's it's just a healthy mental thing, I think, to connect with somebody. And I don't know. I think there is some value to that, whether... I think a lot of times I ignore that a little bit. But I do notice, like, if I do have one of those hour and a half long conversations with Big D or Steve or whoever on the phone, it's like there is, like, a little bit of tension release in my overall just being. You know what I mean? Just a little bit of stress relief.
100%. You make a good point. And I don't know if I told you last year, I think it was around January, February, I created a men's circle. So it's a virtual men's circle where men anywhere and everywhere can join into these Zoom calls, and we just talk about things that us men go through. And last week, the last one that I had, I've got a couple guys from Canada who hop on.
Nice.
Awesome guys. And this was the first time, when I first started these men's circles, he was the most stoic when he would come in. I was like, man, how do I get to this guy? Because he would just stoic demeanor. And yesterday, or not yesterday, but last Thursday, he kind of opened up that, he's gone through PTSD, sexual abuse, suffers from depression, anxiety, and when you say there's still a benefit, when I go to the gym and have these conversations, or when you have a conversation with Big D or Steve, there is part of mental health as far as, because we're social creatures, and so we tap into socializing with one another. It kind of taps into a different area of our brain it's kind of a little bit of a dopamine response, to where it's like, that was really nice, we got a solid conversation.
And just to feel that like connection, like you're heard,
yeah,
they are heard, you are heard, and maybe that's all it is really. But just that, I feel like that's some sort of boost in your mental health.
100%.
So let's talk about the men's what do you call it?
It's a men's social circle.
Okay, so what inspired you to start doing that?
I think it was I'd started originally back in 2018, 2019, where I was actually having a social circle, but it was mainly women that were coming. And women were coming and talking about things that they dealt with, and sometimes even their own partners or spouses. They were like, okay, I've got this going on. And so the more and more I started tapping into it, and then also, I don't know if I've ever mentioned this to you, but just my 6 to 7 years of actually going to therapy myself. And I started having these conversations with my therapist, and how can I be of benefit to somebody else? And it was already kind of in my mind, to where I was going down this path of wanting to help in some way with mental health, and I just started this group. I didn't really know where it was going to go. The first session I had this individual, and we talked for an hour and 15 minutes about, he wanted to talk about investments. I was like, okay, cool, that's what he needs. But then as I started getting more men, I started seeing this trend of a lot of men wanted to talk about relationships. And they wanted to, in a way, they would say they wanted to talk about mental health, but they were saying a whole lot of nothing. But I had to kind of pick through what they were actually saying. So it was like relationships and mental health is what they were wanting.
So one connection I'm saying, or like I could see from that, is, so you go to therapy, you pay the bill, you do all that, you get things out of it, right? So the men's social circle, they don't have to pay to get in. No. So they're actually benefiting probably from stuff you're learning in therapy, and then spreading it kind of, which is a cool idea in a way, because not everybody has the access to get. Not that you're a professional or anything necessarily, but you're obviously not yet, right? But you're learning stuff in therapy, and then you can kind of give other people those same things you're taking away from it. So that's kind of a cool idea.
And that's where I always, like, in the spaces that I'm in, especially around men, in a way, because I've found that asking directly, hey, how's your mental health? Some men just don't know how to put that into words. It's just like, as a man or a boy coming up in our society, a lot of times we're not taught to feel what we feel.
Yeah, I don't know that I got that lesson. I pretty much just tell everybody all my problems right away. I'm always like, it seems like I'm always complaining about something, but or just trying, like earlier when I was saying about the small talk. I'm not into the small talk, but we get going on death. Like, I'll talk your ear off for 2 hours, or something big, like big life things. I'll get really, really in depth with, and I think that has a lot to do with your mental health. Is like, if you don't talk about the big things, that's still in there somewhere, kind of eating away at you if you're not expressing like what you're thinking about it, kind of. But I definitely know what you mean.
But I mean, even you say expressing what you're feeling. So even though you may feel like you're complaining or getting something off your chest, in a way that's still a positive way for you to get out what is on your chest or what's on your shoulders. Some people aren't in that space or comfortable to even, hey, I'm dealing with this, or hey, I had a bad day or shitty day, like blah, 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 this, that, and the other. So, some of the men, I have one specific guy who has been coming consistently, and it's been, I think, 5 months in that he's been consistent. And I think last month, I was like, hey, man, you got a new haircut, you got a date or something? And he started laughing. He's like, man, I gotta say, like, through this journey of being in this men's circle, like, my confidence has increased. You know, I was talking to a girl, but I started to find that I needed to level up to her because I was just kind of doing my thing, but she was up here and I was kind of down here, expecting her to come meet me. But he was saying how this space of being around men who all have like this similar idea of growing and this forward thinking mentality of life has helped him with his confidence and just overall how he communicates.
Yeah, I think communication is something I didn't value for a very, very long time because I don't know, you kind of just do it your way and you're in, I don't know, you're kind of in your own box, your own world, and if you don't think about it ever, you know, you're not really going to get better at it, and you know, you're only as good as the tools in your belt on it. So it's like, you know, I would write songs, I guess that would be my way, and then
Therapy.
like I think there is some of that to it, but that's just like one tiny aspect, you know. It's like through doing the podcast in general and just think, it's just a matter of thinking about it ultimately. Like you listen back to yourself and you're like, well, I could have done that better, or you know, maybe I say these words too much, or which, you know, I'm still very, very guilty of a lot of those things, but I never even had that second thought process, like how, A, what's the vibe I'm putting off in general, and B, what tools do I have, what tools do I lack, what could I even, you know, how could I get better? And not, if you don't have that thought process at all ever, you're just kind of stuck. I feel like you're like in this, you know, just this closed circle that you're not going to expand from. And I feel like it's a very valuable tool to just like even journaling. I think journaling, like I don't really do it as much as I should. I used to. I went through a phase where I was doing it a lot. And to your point about saying, like, you know, having a conversation, getting stuff off your chest, that's what I felt like with the journaling. It's like you have this like crazy amount of just things going on in your brain that you know, are just always there, and they're not, you don't go down a rabbit hole and follow a lot of them a lot of the times. You know, they're just rattling around. If you force yourself to sit down, write it down, you're forcing yourself to express it a very like in the way, and you follow the trail of, you know, the where it takes you, where the thought takes you, instead of just having that superficial like, oh, I need to do this, or oh, I should do that, or oh, you know, you have all these things rattling around and they just stay up there just rattling. But if you follow it, you go like deep dive, and you write 2 pages about it or something, it's like a huge weight because you know there's a lot more to that idea that's rolling around up there. So everything around it, to express it in a specific way, you know, I definitely felt value from just journaling. But then, you know, I get that through conversation as well, and I think that's, you know, part of the benefit to doing the podcast and doing, you know, forcing yourself to actually have a afterthought about things is something I think a lot of people don't.
Your journaling point is, it's deep, because I myself got into journaling, and at first I was like, what kind of value is this even bringing me? But the deeper and deeper I got into my journaling, I found that, and I'm not necessarily an anxious person, but I have a lot of thoughts, and which can create anxiety around specific things. And my journaling has turned into, it's kind of like a gratitude journal. Like tonight I'll journal, I'll say, you know, I'm thankful for connecting with Tyler today, you know, and that's how I look at my day. And what it has brought me is this awareness to see the positives in each and every day, but then it also has allowed me to go deeper into certain things that I'm feeling, but I just can't really put them into words.
Well, because you don't have a need to, you know, you don't have a need to really put down all the things, all the passing thoughts like that are in your brain. You know, there's no other format besides a journal, I feel like. I mean, you can get some of them out through conversation, but there's some things that aren't even going to come up. You know, like this conversation with you, we might talk about 25 different things, but I guarantee it's not everything that's up rattling around in your head. There are things that, you know, won't make the cut for, and there are things that are up in the stuff in my brain that haven't made the cut in 25 years. That's just the same thing I've been thinking for a long time that I've never said out loud before. And getting those things, there is definitely a weight relief once you do kind of follow that down.
100%. And I would say also to hit on that and kind of going back to the mental health and how us men just aren't necessarily given, generally speaking, given platforms or spaces to talk about, I'm dealing with this in my relationship.
It's the gym, right? That's the gym
it's the gym, but I mean, again, and I always say generally speaking because I don't want to place everybody in one circle, but generally speaking, conversations at gyms or bars, sports, how much weight are you lifting, bro? What protein are you taking? What kind of music?
Those aren't my conversations, but I get what you're saying.
Likewise, and so it doesn't necessarily go into depth. And so when I talk to guys that are in my space, I do, say, how's your mental health? Even with my dad the other day, I was on the phone. This is the first time that I mentioned it to him. It's like, how's your mental health? And he talked to me, he was like, hey, you got this going on. And so even that little thing, so going back to me going to therapy, it has given me tools that now I can pretty much spread it to anybody that's in my space. And that's the biggest thing that I try to communicate with men or women is you have to be able to fill up your cup first before you actually start thinking about filling up anybody else's cup.
Well, that brings the gratitude thing. Right now, I've dabbled with the idea of it, but I've never really, I don't think I'm very good at it, and I don't follow through with a lot of things I think about. But that's one thing that, like, you're shifting your perspective in a way, like you were saying. Like if you write down what you're thankful for, all the things that you're grateful for, with my podcast, it's weird to make this connection, but. At a show, I'm more like, oh, that'll be cool to talk about in the podcast, or oh, that'll be like. So if you have that thought kind of deep embedded, like in your subconscious, when you're gonna write down so you're thinking throughout the day, like, what's gonna make the cut for this gratitude. 100%. So then you're focusing on the good, yes. And that's a pretty interesting idea.
It is, man, and
it shifts your perspective.
It does, and what look at life. What is a lot of things that we go through in life is based on perspective. So if somebody, you were going to your show a couple months ago and somebody sideswiped your car,
right?
And so for you to actually be going to a show where you're going to be in front of cameras, you have to put it into perspective. Well, luckily, like, it didn't ruin my car to where I could not get to my show.
Definitely.
So again, perspective. Some people would take that situation and they would allow it to ruin their show or ruin their day. And that's just, when we are able to master our thoughts, I don't think we can truly get to complete mastery. But if we try our best to master our thoughts and master our perception of life and what we go through, generally speaking, we can get into a better space. But if we sit and dwell on these negative thoughts, if people sit and, the news is the other thing. People watch news and it's negativity.
So it's like the opposite version of your gratitude journal.
Yeah, and people are wondering sometimes, why is my life not panning out the way I want it to pan out? And again, it comes back to perception.
What are you focusing on?
What are you focusing on? Yeah.
That's definitely an interesting idea, but that almost makes me like, I should definitely, and I've said this before, but I should definitely do, like, I've done like the gratitude meditations and stuff like that. Another thing that I always wanted to do, there's a bunch of like just joyfulness, like I want to have a better, and this is still just perspective, you'll watch something funny or something, and you'll go like, you watch like a comedy special or listen to a podcast that's funny or something like that, and then you go do something, and your overall just joyfulness and the way you're, like, the vibe you're putting out is so different than if, like, let's say you read something really sad, or you watch the news, or something like that. You go out and your vibe is just different, and I've noticed that in myself, and I've always wanted to be better. But again, it's one of those things that I don't really follow through with. I'm good at following through with very specific things, but self-improvement, I feel like, is something I struggle with a little bit.
It's a muscle. I look at it as, we'll say January 1st, many people have the goal of I want to get in shape by this date, or that date. They initially follow through with it, but then as you get a month in, 2 months in, it's really starting to test your willpower of, hey, can I actually get to this point? And so when it comes to journaling, it is kind of like we are sometimes creatures of habit, and so once we get into our routine, it's like adding something else into our routine.
I don't mean to cut you off, but I gotta, before I forget it.
Yeah.
So the problem I have a lot of times with journaling is I'll end up writing for like an hour, and it's like I gotta have a cutoff at some point. But it's like I feel kind of fucked up if I don't get all the things out. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And then what happens too is I'll not do it for like 2 days or 3 days, and then it's like, oh man, I'm gonna be sitting for a while, like trying to get all the stuff out. I don't know why I get like that. I shouldn't, I should say, all right, 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. But then like I'm on a thought, and it's like I want to follow it all the way down. So it's like a time management issue. And then I think, oh well, I could be doing something like learning a new song, like we talked about at the beginning, or I could be practicing or working out, or So it's like at a certain point, I think you have to like. But then it's like, I don't know. I'm just...
1 page. So that's, I always, in my mind, 1 page is what I'm going to journal. And it doesn't matter if I run out of space.
Do you handwrite or do you computer?
Hand. So everything is handwritten. And I've got a note, it's small. So there's like, I'll just say like 16 lines, 18 lines. And I journal. And typically it's how I start all my journals. I write tonight, or I write this morning. Thankful and blessed for da-da-da-da-da-da. And then I get into, I have a super focus in on, because it's a kind of I pull pieces from my meditations. So what I'm manifesting and meditating on makes it over into my journal, but I only give myself 1 page because, like you, I'd be writing for days.
I write it like it's a book, like a narrative of my life.
Write a book.
Yeah. Well, I should. Don't even get me started on that, because there's like 3 books I would like. There's 2 like science fiction novels I've always had ideas to write for, and there's a couple like guitar method type things that I would like to do. But it's like there are too many things. That's it's just, there's a comic that I want to do, a comic for the Unemployed Architects. I feel like that would be awesome. There's just like so many things, but you only have so much time in a day, and you have to obviously make money to live too. I always think of it like this is my, like, talking myself into it but never succeeding. But if I was to write a book, it would be like just 10 minutes a day, just write. And you don't go backwards really. I mean, you might have to edit some stuff, but just do it till it's done. You could spend 7 years, whatever it takes you do 10 minutes a day, you're going to get it done at some point. Yep. And then you can start the next one. But I still have a trouble just like sitting down and doing it. And the reason I ask you about the medium for what you're, because if I'm typing, I can type so fast. I'm not good at handwriting. Like, it takes me a long time, and if you don't write with your hands, I mean, I write songs a lot of times with write them out. But that's like not even a page most of the time. So like, if I had this idea not too long ago, is like if I used a computer, I could get the thoughts out so much faster. True. That like.
But it also depends on when you're journaling too. So if you're journaling, I journal when I'm actually in bed. So electronics are away. I have my little night light, which is kind of like an amber color. Just, it's easier on the eyes at night. And so that's the other thing that gives me a limitation to how much I can write, because I'm already tired at the end of the night. But if you go, like for you, if you said, well, I'm going to journal, but I'm going to do it on the computer, I don't know if in each of us, we're all different. Maybe that is something that works for you at night. Maybe it's not. But I know, at least for me, if I'm on the computer at night, it stimulates my mind too much, and then I'm up all night.
So, kind of shifting the conversation here. So you're a pretty focused and specific person. So you're you don't eat meat really. You eat like a little bit of fish. Your diet's pretty strict, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
Your workout routine's pretty strict as well, correct?
Correct.
And a lot of these other things, your journaling habits are. So you're a pretty strict, disciplined person. I guess where does that come from? What has led you to be so like hyper focused in those areas?
Man, that's I don't know if anybody's ever asked me that question. I think I pull from past experiences, and
I guess another way to frame it is you're very much in control of a lot of things. It seems like you're very
perception is I'm in control.
Right. Well, you have to always have that. I'm the same way in a lot of ways, but I'm not nearly as like I'm pretty strict about some certain things. Like I practice for this long. I have a whole board out there of everything I got to accomplish in a week, and I really focus on that. But I'm not very good at the sleep part. I'm not very good at the, I work out a lot, but it's not strict. I try to do like 4 days a week, but with shows, and sometimes it just doesn't. Sometimes it's 5 days, sometimes it's 3 days, but I'm in the habit of doing it weekly, but it's not like as specific as a lot. And with my diet, I'm not even close. Like it sounds like you're very on top of it. I am very, very not good at eating well.
I'd say, I think it is an extension of how I started with my eating habits. So, and this is going back 6 years ago, 7 years ago. So I was a pretty strict vegan for, I'd say, probably 6 years, and then over the past year and a half, I have implemented salmon, which I eat salmon, wild caught salmon once a week. And so 6 years of actually staying committed to an actual strict vegan diet has then transitioned or translated over into being consistent with certain things that I'm going after. My meditations, my sleep, my workouts. My workouts now, I had an internal battle yesterday.
Yeah, because is that what you're talking about?
No, it was actually, okay. it was yesterday was Saturday. I think it was yesterday.
Yeah, Saturday.
And there was an internal battle because I had to get some work done. It wasn't something that it wasn't required, but I was just putting in some extra hours. So it was like, okay, should I work or should I actually go and work out? So I kind of went between the two. I actually worked out. So I kind of like put away some of the work. And so again, in my mind, I know how beneficial it is to stay on top of my nutrition and stay on top of my workouts because it impacts my thinking and the way I move about my day. And so when you say like focused and in control, yeah, I'd like to think I'm in control, but I don't think I'll ever be in control because I don't know what can actually come. What I have control over is...
You only have control over the things you have control of.
Right. And so even some of the things that I'm going after, like I just got some news last weekend on something that I'd been meditating on for 6 or 7 months now, and it's the biggest thing that I've done thus far in my life. And I had to kind of take a step back because it was just like, wow, I'm so amazed that when you have focused for 6 months, how far you can actually go. And so that's kind of where it stems from. But I hold myself to a high standard too. And so, I'm fearful of if I lose control or lose my routine of workouts, eating, then it's going to take me down a negative path that I don't want to go down.
I feel like I struggle with definitely the same thing, but I have a very high ideal, but I don't reach that ideal like ever. Like I have this idea of what I should be eating, this idea of this exercise routine I should be doing, like, weekly. I have all these ideals, but literally I'm in the feeling of never getting to those ever, those ideals. I mean, sometimes I do and it feels good. It's like, I accomplished something, and I really do accomplish a good amount of things. It's not like I'm, just laying in bed all day or anything, but it's because my ideal is too, like, I set such high ideals. It's like I always feel like I'm just reaching and I just can't get there. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I guess but your ideals are still very high, it seems like, but you're better at reaching them, it seems like to me.
I set myself up for success. So what I mean by that is I think it's easy to write down goals that are unrealistic. So I would never write down a goal of I want to go to the moon, because I know that's not something I'm going to reach because my mindset isn't in that direction. Now I have other goals to where I have a vision. So I would say I have more of a vision than actual this must be met. So I've got a vision of where I'm going. And so the reason that works for me is because when I set my vision and set my intentions towards my vision, they manifest themselves. But if I actually write something on a piece of paper, I want to become a millionaire in 1 year, that's a goal that I can't reach. I know that's not possible. Now, if I say 15 years, that may be more.
I guess knowing yourself is probably a big part of that.
True.
But, like, I know myself. I know that after a show late at night, there's a good chance that nothing's going to be open but McDonald's, which is very unfortunate. And I probably should plan better. But a lot of times I just don't. So, like, that's a simple goal. Like, it's a simple goal. Like, oh, just go get food at the grocery store before 2 a.m. And it's like something dumb like that. Like, I just will blank on it. I just won't do it. Now, you wouldn't do something like that.
Hell no.
Yeah, right. Exactly. That's exactly what I mean. You have a very strict ideal on a lot of areas, but you stick to it seems like. And I have a tougher time. I have those same strict ideals, but I never can get there. You know what I mean?
I think once, and you made a good point of knowing yourself, and now I'll go back to therapy. Like, therapy has taught me what I am and what I am not. So there are things that I know, like as far as paying attention to detail, that is something I've always struggled with. And I know I'm not very good at that, but it's something that I can slowly work towards. Now, being consistent with diet and workouts, I know that's something I am. So there's a difference of knowing yourself, but then also the balance of knowing who you are and knowing who you're not. Because I think,
but I guess my thing is, like, I know that, like, I want to not eat McDonald's at 2 a.m. and I know that, like, there's a good chance I would do it, you know. But how do you overcome that? Like, you know, how do you, just that little and this is something small and stupid, I know, and it's not like I eat McDonald's all the time, but right now it's really weird too, because, you know, when I used to do shows, you'd get home at, you know, 1, 2 a.m. There'd be a lot of places open. It's really just down after like 11 p.m. That's like it is McDonald's. Like, everywhere's so short-staffed. And so I've been running into this problem more as of late, because, I mean, you know, I could get a burrito somewhere. I wouldn't feel as bad about it as opposed to, like, a cheeseburger from McDonald's. You know, it's just something dirty about that. Just saying out loud makes me feel disgusting.
That's the devil's word.
Pretty much. That's how I feel about it. But I still do it. I'm not gonna lie and be like one of those people that would be like, "Oh, I'd never eat McDonald's." Like, yeah, I do. You know, I feel guilty about it when I do. It's something I try to avoid. But I guess my question is, like, I know myself to the point that, like, I know my standard is not to eat McDonald's, but I also know that there's going to be times where I'm not going to meet that standard, and I don't prepare very well for that. And I don't know. I don't know what I'm trying to say. I'm in a lot of ways, I put a lot of things out. I do a lot of things. I create as much content as I can on, you know, I work out. I get a lot of things accomplished, but it's like I'm a mess. Like, I'm a mess that I just do things. It's not super organized, but I'll, like, even this podcast, like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Like, I just, let's throw a camera up today. Like, let's just see what happens, you know? Like, I don't, show, you know, Blair, the guy I used to play with all the time, you know, we would go and set up, and it was always so funny, how he would set things up. Everything was so detailed, so specific. He's just that type of guy, you know? He has like a very, like, specific way of doing things. I just, like, plop stuff on the ground, and, like, by the end of it, it looks okay, you know? But, you know, it's just like a disgusting mess until, you know, I don't have any plan. I'm like, I'm gonna do this, and this, and then I do it, and then it's like, okay, next thing, you know? Like, I'm very focused in how I do it, but again, it's like it always starts from a mess. And I think that's a metaphor for me as a person.
Yeah, I mean, we're all different. We approach things in a much different way, and that's fine.
I'm saying I don't necessarily want to be like that.
Yeah, and that's the point I'm trying to make, is we're all different. So just because I have X, Y, and Z doesn't mean Joe Schmo down the street has to have it, or you have to have it, or anybody has to have it. Again, I just go back to what works for me.
I get that. I guess I feel like I'm not phrasing it. Like, how do you... I mean, you didn't start from my place, so it's hard for me to ask this question, because how do you get from where I'm at to where you more where you're at, more specific, more focused, more disciplined person? I mean, and again, I feel like I'm disciplined in a lot of ways, but my expectation on myself, and a lot of times, is a lot higher than maybe it should be. But also, it's like there are things I could do to, be better. And so, like, how do you? I don't know if you have any input. I guess.
So you're saying, and I just want to make sure I understand. So you're saying, how do you become more disciplined in your approach, or are you trying to say, like, how am I so disciplined with the temptations of, I can go out and potentially go to a fast food joint versus staying on? Is that what you're?
Yeah, just like, I don't know. You don't start from a mess, though. That's the
I did, though.
Okay,
I did.
So how did you get from that to where you're at now?
I got pissed off. I got pissed off with the same results that I was always getting. I was getting, I'll start off with, even with the business that I was running. I thought I had things put together, but it was just similarly to you. Like you say, you put this, and this, and then it was like, okay, what's next? Where am I going? And so that's how I felt. So I was doing all of these things, but there was no type of result. And again, these are differences as far as, but I'm just trying to give you a backstory.
That's the whole point. Don't feel like I'm going to take offense to anything you're saying. No.
And so, like, I was a mess one time as far as finding purpose and finding direction in life and getting everything in order in my own space. How it started, how it began, I got pissed off, and then I actually listened to somebody's advice of, hey, go to therapy. I was like, whoa, why do I need to go to therapy? I had traveled the world. I'd started my own business. I was athletic. I was healthy.
We got into that crazy story about your traveling last time. That was interesting.
And so it was kind of a combination of all those things starting to manifest, and I just didn't know where I was or who I was. And so I say therapy was kind of the tipping point, because it put things into perspective of like, hey, things aren't in order. I don't know which direction I'm going. But I also had a lot of trauma that I had to get through in order to actually hear my own thoughts of what I wanted in life. And so that's what it took me. And then looking back on things that were said in the past towards me or at me pissed me off. And I was like, you know what? I'm done with this shit. Like, I want, and that's where my super focus has become. So it has been kind of like a little bit of traumatic experiences, failures. It's not happy with where I was in my place in life. And so that's kind of how it has gotten to today, to where I go to the store every week, and I know I'm going to go on Saturday, get my groceries. I know on Sundays I'm doing my meal prepping for the week. I know on...
It's just wild for me to hear. Like, I would never even...
I know on Sunday mornings or late mornings, after I meal prep, sometimes I go to the gym. I know every single night before bed, I'm reading about 5 or 10 pages in my book of whatever book I'm reading. In the morning, I wake up, I journal, I read my book again. I sometimes get my meditations in the morning. So it is very, very structured. Yeah. And that's kind of, I talk to older coaches and friends and when college and high school, and they're like, man, you're just like so just like stoic and just boom. So kind of like a military style. And I just think it was just, some of it was my upbringing. I had responsibilities to do. And so I'm a little bit of a tangent, but that gives you a background of how I got to where I am today. And so now it's just like, if I don't meal prep, my whole week's, it throws me off so much that I just can't function. If I don't read in the morning, if I don't meditate or journal throughout my week, it throws me off.
I guess part of part of that is like the jazz of it, like there is, you got to be able to, kind of not roll with the punches, but I get a little too burned out, I think, if I do something like that. It's like I need some different things to happen. And part of that, is why I'm a musician, I think, in general, because it brings you just, every show is different. Every, it's not so like, there's, I think, a greatness to being able to be as structured as you, but I don't know that I would be able to do it, is ultimately what I'm saying. I think I like a little bit of that jazz in there. But I would like to be better at certain things. Like my diet, I wish that I was a little bit more on top of it. And working out, I'm pretty okay at. But I could be more structured with it. And like all the self-improvement things I hear from you is like, I just a lot of times don't feel like I have enough hours in the day to kind of spend on. I guess being more structured with it would allow, instead of just like, oh, today I'm just going to try to do this joyful meditation for, 30 minutes. Instead, just like have like, okay, I'm going to do it for this long every day, and maybe minimize. Because I think what happens sometimes is I get like an idea like that, like journaling or something, and then I end up and focus way too long on it. And I'm like, I can't do this every day. Like, there's no way. So maybe that's my takeaway from what you're saying is I need to be more picky about the things as far as the amount of time I'm going to put towards them and just try to stick to it a little bit better. But I don't know.
Yeah, I keep on going back. We're all different, So something may work for you that
I don't know that anything's working.
You would never know until you try.
Well, I mean, it seems like I don't know. I don't know if I would say what I'm doing thus far has been. I mean, it's tough to say who's right, who's doing anything right. I mean,
true.
I could have a job and have a ton of money, and is that the right way to go about life? I really don't know. I mean, I do feel like it would make some things quite a bit easier, but there's the grass is always greener. I have plenty of people that are like, you get to go play music and make money, and it's like, oh yeah. It's pretty awesome too. Like,
I find that some people have like this envy for the freedom that we sometimes have. So you have more freedom than some people. Just given your career and your profession, it allows you some freedom. Other people are glued to a computer and it's just like boom, boom, and then go home and then have to take care of kids. And there's no disrespect to any of that.
They have freedom in a different way. They have the financial freedom that I don't have.
True.
I can't I can't. I hear on other podcasts they say a couple guys I listen to were saying like once you get to a point where you go to a restaurant and you don't have to think about like you spend this much money on that, you can just get whatever you want, not think about the money part of it. That's like the level of financial you kind of should be your goal, And I'm not even close to that there, I'm always counting my pennies, and because I have to, I have to survive, and I just wonder if what everybody's perspective, like you keep saying, is different, but I wonder if there's got to be some happy medium somewhere.
I'm sure there is, and I'm sure once we get to that happy medium, I think human beings are, for the most part, smart, and we will find that and we'll know it. And I like to give people the benefit of the doubt as far as, when I say smart, because I do think that we are much more capable than what we tell ourselves. And that just goes into like everything that we're talking about now is just, again, you asked the question of how I got here is just mindset. Like I said, I got pissed off about a lot of things, and I used it as motivation. I told myself, and I just told this story the other day, and I didn't realize how much it affected my life. And when I was in first grade, I'll never forget this, and I'll never forget this. We were in class, and we were going over I don't know what we were working on in class. And
was I in your class?
No,
we would have been around the same.
No, it wasn't. We were in the same class.
You went to Lincoln School, right?
I did, yeah.
It's the same school. Even.
Same school, and so we were in class, and when it came to academics, or when it comes to academics, sometimes it does take me a little bit longer to actually understand concepts because I like to understand it 100 all the way around. So I raised my hand and I said, I don't understand this. And the teacher came over and helped me. And I think I asked 2 more questions. And the 4th time she came over and she explained it in a different way. And I was like, oh, okay. And I'll never forget this. She stood over me and she said, duh. And so that was like, you talk about being humiliated in front of your classmates. And so when I talk about going back to things that have pissed me off, that was one of them. I never want to feel like I'm not educated enough or smart enough because of that situation.
Yeah, but you got to realize in that situation, like that's the teacher being bad. Like,
it is, but it's a traumatic experience.
Yeah.
So that's a traumatic experience that I had to work through.
I don't know. I'm not like a real teacher. I teach guitar, so it's definitely a different mentality. But I definitely always am trying to find a different way to explain it to make somebody understand, instead of, if they aren't getting it, it's my fault. It's not their fault. I mean, maybe they didn't practice a lot or whatever, but a concept. And I don't know. I just feel like that's just that. I get that it's a traumatic experience, but man, that's not good on that teacher's part.
But and we think about coaches that are like that, and teachers that are like that, or people of influence that are like that, and you wonder, or I wonder at least, like how many kids are, like how much their growth is stunted because of situations like that. I'm sure you and I have had coaches that have said things, and you're just like, that was a shitty thing to say to me, and you're just like, wow, like you really said that to me. So I don't know, man. These are things that I often think about.
I just got used to it. I don't know. I just, we both know a certain coach that yelled a lot in high school. I don't know if you know who I'm talking about, but one of his big things that he would always say would be like, don't listen to how I'm saying it, listen to what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I feel like that idea definitely, to the point almost to the where sometimes I don't think about the way that I'm saying something, because I'm like, they're going to listen to the words, not how I'm saying it. But I do feel like that was a good lesson when he was saying that. But I don't know. I don't know where I was going. I lost my train of thought. But it's like how he was saying it was, not very nice a lot of the times. And
but it's like you were saying, what he was saying is the context of what he was trying to teach us.
Yeah.
And so on the outside looking in, some people will be like, wow, he's a really terrible coach. But really, I mean, he was a good coach.
He was like my favorite coach.
He had a lot of knowledge.
Tied for my favorite. I had two favorite coaches, I think.
But yeah, I get where you're coming from, though, as far as the context. But you, as far as teaching guitar and teaching it in a different way.
I would never go, duh. Like, why don't you get this? Like, you're so stupid. Like, who would do that?
Dude, I don't know, but
people have been teaching for too long, probably.
Content.
Yeah.
I
don't know. My brother's a teacher. I would be interested to hear what he would have to say about that. But I don't think that he would think that was a very good teacher. Because he's like a legit teacher. I'm fake teacher. I one-on-one with one kid, once a week. That's not that challenging,
But it's still a teacher, though.
It is. It's more like a coach. I feel more like a guitar coach than a guitar teacher. Yeah. But there's not as... The thing about learning guitar is, like, you don't have a competition to be preparing for. It's hard to... that's the way I've always felt. Doing shows, I feel like that's kind of my competition and stuff. But a lot of people play guitar, that's not their... even you're not playing a show. You're just... you're playing guitar. That's it. It's like... The thing is the goal. It's not like, I've always been like, okay, I'm going to do this, and then eventually it's going to amount to something. And so it's hard to get that, like, that, even though I feel like a coach, they don't feel like a athlete, you know what I mean? But I try to get that mentality in you a little bit. It's hard though, without that goal. I don't know why I brought that up, but.
No, that's a good point.
It's just a whole different thing, It's I relate playing music, and we talked about this in the first podcast, is like, there is a lot of overlap with playing music and being an athlete. You have to practice a lot. It's a lot of muscle memory, a lot of, time put towards something. And there's like warm-ups you can do to, there's a lot of, because being a musician, especially a singer, and any sort, anything, you're doing movement. That's all sports are. It's like this very specific movement to get your muscle memory to do the thing that in real time. But again, with sports, you have the goal of, I guess the goal is whatever you make it.
Right.
My goal is to maybe, if I was a student or somebody that wasn't like trying to be a professional musician, would be like, oh, my game would be to learn this song from start to finish, or like have 10 songs I could play at any time for, something like that. But it's definitely, there's a lot of similarities, but I don't know how to, because I see it that way because I've done both things. I don't think most of my students would have that same perception of it. And I try to express that to them a little bit, because a lot of times I'll be like, did you do any sports? And, a lot of them say no most of the time, but every once in a while I get one. So I'd be like, okay, so you know how in the sport you do like a warm up, you do like so this scale is a good warm up for when you play. Like before you get into the actual stuff, you should maybe do this a couple times, and then when you go to actually play guitar, do whatever else you're doing, you're gonna have more success because you'll be warmed up. Some idea like that. I like to throw that in there but most of the kids I feel like don't really, and adults. There's plenty. I teach adults too, but
yeah, and we have a unique experience that we can tap from, just being involved in sports. But even how I think of it, if I was in that space of teaching guitar, is I try to implement it. For me, I've always been like, how do I implement, or how can I use this as a life type of goal or type situation. And so I don't know, I can't really, I wouldn't be able to understand, because I've been involved in sports. Like I could kind of, like with some of the students that you have, they've never been athletes, and so like I'm sure you're like, well, how would it be if you were never in sports? It's hard to make that
correlation. Well, you just have to throw that metaphor out immediately because they don't understand what you're talking about. Yeah. But if they have been, I know I have, like something that they might not have a connection with in their mind, but I can make a connection to make them understand something I'm trying to say through that, and and that kind of goes back to your point of the teacher going, duh. It's like, okay, they don't get it this way. Let's throw something else in and see if they can get it that way. And if they aren't getting it, it's probably your fault. It's not their fault. I mean, and if I could understand being very frustrated. I mean, I've been frustrated with plenty of my students, but when it comes to like saying negative things, I think that's where you got to draw the line at any point, especially because with music, it's like you want to have the students have such a good association with music. That was one of the things that I pulled from. I took lessons for like maybe 2 months when I was little, like maybe 8, and I went to these lessons and I just hated them. It wasn't the teacher or anything. He wasn't very structured, and I still draw back to that in how I teach. Totally informed the style of teaching, because I didn't memorize things at all. I would go there, he would have me play stuff out of a book, and then I would leave, and then I would try to practice stuff at home, but nothing would ever stick, But it was like eventually, you just I ended up, and I hated it, and I quit, and I was like, oh, that was terrible. And then fast forward 4 or 5 years later, I'm like 12 or 13 or whatever, I can't get a guitar out of my hand, and it's because my want to do it exceeded my want not to do it ultimately, I think. But so I don't know, it's just like nothing that teacher did for me grabbed me. He kept me with it, and I didn't have any positive associations. So it was more negative. I'd have to practice, and I didn't want to practice, and just all these having that negative association with music, I feel like is and you hear it with coaches, like you were saying earlier, when you had coaches maybe say stupid, mean things to you. Music teachers are just as bad, and what happens, I feel like, is a lot of times kids will join band and they'll have a teacher that isn't a fan of them, or like the way they teach doesn't work for them, and they get this negative feeling with it. And it hurts me a little bit, because they always have that kind of feeling associated with music, and that makes me sad, and I don't want that ever in my studio. It's only positive stuff.
I just don't understand how whatever profession, career, whatever, as a teacher, as a leader, this one style or one-way highway method, I just I've never understood that. But I don't know if it's laziness, content, or just the inability or the want to actually open up. And
just trust me, I know what I'm talking about, method.
Yeah.
Just do it this way.
Yeah, that always kind of irked me for whatever reason. Just, oh yeah, I used to do this back in the day, so do this. Okay, well, obviously things change over years, so
And
if you did that 10 years ago,
your experience is different than their experience.
Yeah. So, yeah, I wish there was.
I guess that does. I mean, your experience obviously informs the way you do anything, but like teaching is one of those things. So I mean, your experience would, but using that as like your only tool, I feel like to get your point across is not a good teacher or leader, right? I think.
Or stringing a guitar. Hey, there's only one way to string a guitar. I'm sure there are multiple ways to string guitars, but somebody, I'm sure, in your years and experience of working with guitar, somebody's like, well, I do it like this all the time, and this is the only way. And you're like, dude, like, there's also this way and that way and this way.
Yeah, I don't know. That's more of like a mechanical thing, though. There are certain things in doing that it's like you literally will mess it up if you do it a certain way, you know. But I know what you're saying. I think you're correct. You know, you see it done all sorts of ways that, in my eyes, are not right. when people bring in their guitars, and I'm just like, whoa, this is gonna need some time. But you know, I wouldn't say that. I would just, you know, be like, okay, well, this is why this isn't good. Maybe try to do it this way. But and I've struggled with that. I've had some just this overall idea, not string guitars, but like I've had some trouble with. We're kind of drawing back to our whole communication thing that we were talking about, how that's like a tool that I didn't really try to get better with, which, you know, teaching is one of those things that's helped me a lot, getting better with the communicated podcasting, obviously, as well, but customer service at the, you know, the store I was working at, all that stuff helps you, you know, kind of fine tune those communication skills. But I think when I first started teaching, I had some students, because I don't know, it's like I would sit down with them, and, you know, they weren't doing something right. I'd be like, no, like this, you know, no, like that, nope, you know, I get in this like where this loop where I'm saying no a lot, and I feel like, you know, it's not like I was being mean about it. It was just like, nope, you know, just those little things over and over again. I did have a couple students that I realized were a little bit sensitive to this style of teaching. So I very much had to like rethink, like, you need to say a lot of good things as well as bad 100%. Things to balance it out. And that's something that, you know, even though I wasn't saying like, duh, you know, is a form of kind of the same thing. It's not to that extent, but, you know, I was kind of, you know, I was always kind of raised in sports with the thought of, like that coach I was saying, think of what they're saying, not how they're saying it. Not that I was saying it bad or anything, but I was just saying I was only saying when they did things wrong. So that was their association with me. And I feel like that's something that, like, I've really worked on a lot, and I have to still tell myself some days, like, so maybe to an extent it's similar to that with that teacher that says duh, but obviously to another level.
There's when I was coaching athletes, I'd see this all the time where there are a few times where other coaches would throw shade my way, and I never really understood why. I know sometimes I can have a strong personality at times, but I actually went the extra mile to actually learn about the person that I was coaching versus, hey, this is how we do it. This is what we're going to do today. Go out and do it. So I would always tap into, hey, how's your mom doing? How's your dad doing? What did you have for breakfast? What did you have for lunch? And although it was like, it seemed on the outside looking in, it was just like basic questions, you can tell a lot from a person just asking basic questions.
Especially performance-wise.
Yeah,
I mean, if they tell you that they ate McDonald's, go back to the McDonald's for lunch, you're going to be like, oh, this is going to be a different person than it normally is. Because that's not going to affect them very good. You know?
100%.
And kids, dude, I never thought about that when I was little. I wish somebody would. I mean, people said it. I know that I learned it at some point, but, like, it didn't, like, it didn't register. That's what I'm trying to say. It didn't register when, you know, I'd go to Subway and eat a foot-long sub, you know, like a meatball, just this giant amount of food. And, of course, I was burning, you know, you'd have 2-a-days or, you know, wrestling and football or just, like, track where it would just be, like, crazy workout. At the end of the day, you know, it would be, like, it didn't matter that much, but I didn't even equate them together. I wish that somebody would have been like, okay, if you're going to have to, you know, put this much energy towards like a track meet or wrestling meet or a football game, like like you should be more specific in what you're eating and stuff like that. I never could. I mean, I'd heard people kind of talk about it, like kind of, I took health, everybody has a health class where they talk about diet, which, you find out later is all wrong. It's not your food pyramid should not look like that at all. But, I didn't have just like hot pockets, McDonald's. I was eating like Little Debbie's stuff for breakfast. I just ate so bad. I was drinking soda all the time. I remember I gave up for like I think it was like my sophomore year of wrestling, because I got to wrestle varsity, but I had to cut weight. So one of the things I did to cut weight was I was like, no more soda. But then I just drank Gatorade, like just as much. And like, how good is that for you in comparison? I mean, maybe there's a little less sugar. Maybe there's, the carbonation. I don't know that really does a whole. I mean, do you know if carbonation is bad?
I'm not, as far as nutrition, I just know soda was, I don't think it's very beneficial for performance.
Well, I do have kind of a caveat there. There is a balance you can do if you're not, so if I'm playing a show, I'm thinking about this, because the shows are for me my game time performance. So everything I consume on the day of a show is for the success of the show a lot of the time. So just like I wish I would have thought about in high school for like a football game or wrestling meet or whatever. So it's like I eat this time. So a soda, if you don't drink soda, provides a lot of calories, a lot of sugar that is like one dose. Like if you're not used to drink, I very much like I drink this much caffeine on show days. If I drink like a soda, it'll help my show a little bit, because I'll have just a little bit more pep in my step. But it doesn't work if you drink soda every day. You have to. So I don't think moderation. That. Yeah, I mean, and that's the key to everything, which I don't know that I'm great at. But I don't think that there are probably better ways to get the sugar, but it's easy, it's convenient, and if you just do it like small, that I don't think it's the devil or anything. Just like McDonald's isn't really the devil, but should you eat McDonald's for more than one meal a week? Probably not. Yeah. I don't think that would be good. I don't think you should probably do it more than twice a month, probably, but there's a time and a place that I think that it's okay to kind of splurge that way. And I do think there is some sort of benefit I've noticed if I am not drinking soda throughout the week and then I drink one right before I perform.
So you feel better, you feel more alert.
I feel like I have a little bit more, like I said, pep in my step, just a little bit more like focus,
That reminds me of was that show Ren and Stimpy?
Yeah.
Is that the show?
Yeah.
The bald-headed little dog?
Yeah.
That reminds you ever see I don't know, and correct me if I'm wrong, but where there would be scenes where the dog would have the eyes wide open. Yeah.
I call those Coke eyes. Yeah, because everybody knows somebody who's done Coke, and they get those eyes where they're And ultimately, it's funny because it's kind of what I'm searching for. I want to have that level of focus for performance, but I'm not going to do Coke to get there. So it's like, all right, I'll drink a soda. I'll take stuff. Alpha Brain is usually what I take, and I'll try to like get that like kind of Coke eyes, but not the cost reward benefit to doing something like cocaine.
Probably wouldn't be
if it was something like in a pure form that like I knew was cocaine, I wouldn't be that opposed to trying it. But that's not what you get offered. You get offered from some guy in a bar that's like, who knows what is even in this.
Right.
And you hear of the people dying from fentanyl and all that
that's
stuff
that's
that they cut the cocaine with. So it's like that obviously would never be in even my realm of thinking that would be okay. But anyway, I digress. But there is a certain level of like, I want to get to that peak performance. That's something I'm literally on the hunt for every performance I have. Even some days where I'm just like trying to like a podcast or like I have a long practice. I might try to get a little closer to that spot. Sometimes I do the opposite with practice. Sometimes I'm like, all right, I want to feel terrible at this practice, so it's really tough, but I still get through it. So that way, if I ever feel like that in a show, I'll be able to just power through. There's a lot of those stupid little things. It's weird how like, you're a little superstitious, it seems like, with your routines. I'm like that with my shows. So it's like those things always come first. And there's a certain way I do it every day. Every time I have a show, I do like these specific things, and I'm very disciplined with that. But with a lot of other things, because because I spend so much energy kind of being disciplined with that stuff, I lose a little bit of oomph on those other things sometimes, because I'm so just like, I want the show to be the best. And sometimes I think that just that idea in itself is maybe not a, I wish that I didn't care. A lot of musicians are just like, just show up, just play some songs.
It's like when you get to that level,
a few beers.
when you're able to get to that level where it's just kind of, I think some people call it like a flow state.
It's my favorite. It's like if you said I was addicted to any sort of drug, that would be it. Like I'm obsessed with trying to get there, and I do things sometimes that probably don't necessarily line up with that. But I mean, that is literally always in the back of my head. Like, how am I going to perform the best? Because when I'm there, it's like, it's the only word that comes to mind is magical. I feel like like magic. Like when I had a night the other night where I was saying I didn't want to get off stage. I mean, part of it was I didn't want to socialize, but I was just in the zone the whole time. Like, I was just killing these songs. Like, I wouldn't have to think too hard. I was singing in key well. Everything sounded just right, pretty close to where I wanted to. So it's like, I'm just like hammering this crowd, and they're like into it. And it's like, I don't want to stop. That's part of the reason that it was tough for me to get off stage, which I honestly think might be a negative at some point as well, because, you can't. I mean, how long can you really do 1,000%? There's going to be a point where, you and at that point, it might be a little off-putting to just keep hammering people with things but I just want to get there, and I want to stay there. What I mean?
There's something going back to, because you mentioned Alpha Brain, and I can't remember, but I saw something with kind of like mental performance and clarity, as far as like I want to say it was like something with coconut oil and eating a tablespoon
MCT
of
oil.
I don't know if it was MCT. I can't remember specifically. Something is bringing me back to coconut oil, as far as like having fat so that our brain.
Keto. It's all that's like part of the thinking of like the keto diet is like you think clearer a lot of the times because you're not as cloudy for this kind of reason that you're saying. I think as a lot of people, I think, they like fasting because it gives them a little bit clearer mind state, and they like being on the keto diet because for the same reason.
Yeah, I'd have to go back and look for sure, but it was something.
Because coconut oil has a lot of ketones, I think, because of the kind of fat that.
See, I'm not even a nutritionist, so I don't even speak.
I eat McDonald's. We talked about this already. I already lost all sort of. I don't have any. I try. I know what I should be doing a lot of the time, and I mean, I make an effort, but I'd say I'm about 50-50 between like I'll eat a salad and then I'll eat like a whole pizza. So
I think we're at the end of the day, I think we're all trying to find balance. We're trying to find what works best for our lifestyles, and we're trying to figure out how to get to true happiness in life. And
for me, that's that sweet spot of that flow state of that performance, which you hope for every time you perform, but realistically it's 6, 7, 10 out of 10. It's not every time. Maybe less. Depending on when you talk to me. Sometimes I'm like that's like 2 out of 10. Like I'm like a two good performances to 8 bad or not bad, but just like where you don't reach that, and you can just see my vernacular immediately. Right. If I don't get that flow state, I think it's a bad performance. When it's actuality, it's fine. It's still good.
Yeah.
But
so there's probably like some things in that you may have, I don't know, kicked your drum different.
It might even just be that like I didn't get to that point. It's all it takes for it to be a bad performance in my head is not getting there, which is silly. It's a silly way to think, because if I'm playing 3 shows a week, there's definitely going to be probably 1 or 2 of those that aren't going to get there. Right. Sometimes it's all of them, like I'm saying, but so it's like so silly that I would say that was a bad show.
Yeah, I mean, as I could see, like in your space of And I even have the same thing as far as when I'm in the spaces that I'm in, and or the conversations that I'm in, and I'm like, I just said one thing that it just didn't hit the way I wanted it to hit, and I'll go and overanalyze the whole thing, and the whole conversation went well, but it was just like that
one thing,
specific piece.
Maybe they didn't even, whoever you're talking to didn't even notice, and that's how it is with the performing too. Is like, I think I mess stuff up a lot, and like people are like, what? Like, what are you even talking about? Like, they don't have any idea. Maybe some musicians would be like, oh, I definitely know what you're talking about. But anyway, I mean, I'm definitely not an amazing musician, but you know, I think most common people, they aren't like nitpicking, like, oh, he was flat on that. Oh no, like he wasn't singing that quite right. Like I've talked about this ad nauseum probably on my podcast in general, but you know, I used to just let that like one note where I hit a bad note just like ruin the whole song, like the whole rest of the song, just because and it's a 1 second of a bad thing ruined 3.5 minutes because I'm just like so like off put by that stupid.
Right.
But and then you get 4 of those in a show, and I'm like, oh, that show wasn't great. Like, I hit 4 seconds of a 3-hour show.
And being, you know, me personally, I'm my own worst critic, and because I know, and we talked about it before, I know what standard I'd hold myself to, and when I don't meet that standard, it's frustrating. But there is also a side of that to where I can do better. There's still things that I can work on, and so in my mind, I've thought about it. There's a saying that I used to say to athletes, and it's not it's progress, not perfection, because as an athlete, or even myself, as the spaces I'm in and the things that I'm currently getting ready to dive into, I know that there's never, that perfection is hard to get to. If I can just have the progress. I don't think you can even
be, I'm just obviously using my experience as a musician. Like, I've never played a perfect show. Never. I don't think there is a way for me to do that. Like, even a song, like just one song out of a whole set, I don't know if I've ever played it perfectly. Like, I always screw something up. Like, I don't know that perfection, even though that's what you're striving for, I don't know that that's even an option sometimes, you know? So progress, I think, is a much better place to be, a much better headspace to be in. Like, I just want to be better than last time. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I get caught up a lot of times in that. Anyway, sorry to cut you off. Go
no, you make a good point as far as the progress in life. Lil Wayne has a line in one of his songs. He says it's the process. I think I may be butchering it, but he says it's a process that's so much stress, but it's the progress that feels the best. So in the process, and I refer to myself in the process of my own life and the things that I'm getting ready to go into, it has been stressful to get to that point, but it's the progress that feels the best because I know I'm moving in the right direction. It's something that, although I might not be able to see everything pan out in live like right now, I at least know that the direction I'm heading in, there's still progress to be made, and there's still things that I can continually work on.
Well, there something else that kind of goes along the same lines is you hear about those people that, you know, work so hard for their whole life, and then they get like successful at something, and then they're like, oh man, those years of grinding, those were the best years of my life. It's because you got to enjoy the journey a little bit.
You have something to work towards.
And I try to, yeah, because once you get to that spot, you have to you either have to just, I don't know, be fine with being there, which it sounds like that's tough, or find a new mountain to climb, you know. So, you know, even though it's just so funny to me that people like, me included, I'm in this same thing where I think like, oh, if I just got to this spot, I'd be like happy and better. And but, you know, 100% of the time, it doesn't seem like that's the case. I mean, there are definitely aspects of your life that would be better, but you know, you don't have, like you're saying, like that progress to make anymore. If you get to the place like Steve Martin, he's a famous comedian who, you know, has been around forever. He's had to quit doing stand-up because he would go out and he wouldn't even have to say anything. People would just laugh, They would just laugh and laugh and laugh, and he could be bad. They were just so happy to see him, and he's just so naturally funny. He was so good at it. It's like he pretty much just had to quit, because I mean, what is the point of doing stand up if you don't have to do the stand up?
Right.
And I think that there's something to that, and it's like you almost hope to. I mean, if you were a comedian, you'd hope to never really get there. You want to be successful, but not that success. There always has to be something.
There's Tiger Woods is coming to my mind right now, and as somebody that has been involved in golf, not as much. I think it's kind of it doesn't bring that same enjoyment for me anymore, and I don't have 4 hours to burn on a Saturday or Sunday. But Tiger Woods, at the peak of his prime, wanted to change his swing. And when I think about perfection, I wonder, and that'd be a great conversation to have with Tiger, is like, were you chasing perfection, or did you really feel like there was still progress to be made with your swing? You had just won all these majors, right. And then you're like, okay, I'm going to just change my swing. So it's like, same thing with Michael Jordan, same thing with Kobe, same thing with LeBron. At what point... Muhammad Ali. Floyd Mayweather is another one. It's just like, Floyd's got a perfect record. People kind of argue whether or not those were legitimate wins because he's handpicked. But at the end of the day, he still had to get in the ring and fight somebody. Yeah. Professionals, right? And so when we talk about perfection, I wonder, is that the point when people retire because it's just like there's no more that I can do, and that's kind of in my own life. I look at those things.
Well, with fighters, sorry to interrupt again. That's terrible. With fighters, like, does the challenge become at a certain point like, okay, I'm no longer good enough to compete like I was when I was in my 25, 30, somewhere in there, probably, really 25 to 29. It's such a small window where you get good enough that, like, you could, you know what you're doing to the point where you're succeeding professionally, and it's not a large window where you've gotten good enough that you can compete in those high levels, but then also you're knowing all the things you need to know at the same time. So it's not just the athletic part of it. You get old enough to where you can wrap your head around a lot of these things that maybe you couldn't when you're 20, and then so you get to, like, you're 34. Like, I don't remember how old Muhammad Ali was when he was still fighting, because he won the championship, stripped from him because he didn't want to go to Vietnam and fight, and then he came back, he won the title, and then he lost it, and then he won it again. So he won it 3 times. But he's old. Like when he fought George Foreman, the Rumble in the Jungle, it's like he didn't fight like Muhammad Ali used to fight. Now, as part of what you're saying, like, I wonder with, like, that kind of thinking is, like, being old and fighting all these younger people, more talented, maybe more athletic people, changing your swing or changing your style is almost like a new mountain to climb, because you're not, because of your physicality, you're not the same as you used to be. So, like, instead of retiring when he was at the peak performance, now the new mountain is, how do I compete with this body against the kids that have my body when I was 25? So I don't know if that's
it could be. Your body starts breaking down. You can't do the things.
But that gives you another mountain to climb.
It does.
What I'm saying.
Yeah,
but,
I mean, I'm
hard
sure.
To quit, I think.
I'm sure when Michael won his last championship, and then he came back with the Wizards. And from what I understand, it was kind of like the reason behind that, and I could be wrong, but from what I've read, was just to put himself in position to have ownership of a team. So it was like, that's the next mountain of becoming of. So you do kind of put in these type of nuggets to where it's just like, okay, I got a nugget to catch. A new equation. Nugget to catch. Even when you and I boxed, we were consistent 6, 7, 8 weeks, and every single week I would take video and I'd go home and didn't tell you this, I'd sit there and I'd study it for like an hour because I was like, okay, if I'm going to get in the ring and I'm getting punches thrown at me, I don't like that. So how can I analyze my form, my technique, and then analyze you as a boxer? And towards the end, before I took the pretty big punches from you, that jacked me up, I was going into, like, when we would spar, there was a level of confidence that I was stepping in. Like, I felt confident with my defense that I was like, okay, I know there's going to be punches coming, but there's a nugget that I can reach because I know I can get better.
Well, and I think that your style is like you could always just get away from somebody, no matter who you're boxing. You're really good at that, like just dodging and avoidance. But another way to steer it would be like, okay, well, how do I become an aggressor instead of just a defensive fighter? And that's a different mountain to climb, like we're saying.
It is. But there were times where I was like, okay, I think I kind of have the hang of this. I can slip these punches. Here's a counter here. I could set this up to here and this, that, and the other. But again, it came down to there were nuggets for me to chase because I knew that, okay, next week's going to be a different fight. You started getting aggressive. I had to figure out, okay, how am I going to spar against somebody who's aggressive? Or how do I spar against somebody who's going to counter me and I'm trying to counter them?
Yeah, well, not a lot happens in that case. So I don't know. You always hear people who are into fighting, they always say you shouldn't even spar like we spar anyway, but it's fun. I don't know. Anyway.
There's a level of confidence that at the end of the day, there was a level of confidence that I was able to pull from that, just knowing how to throw my hands.
And how to, like, that if you got punched, it wasn't going to wreck you, kind of. Like, because there is some sort of art to, like, knowing how to take a punch. Like, I don't think a lot of people have ever even been punched.
I mean, that last punch you hit, bro, you hit me. I walked right into your punch, man.
Sorry. Sorry.
And it was just like...
It's not fair, everybody, because I'm a lot bigger than Kendrick. I just want to point that out.
And it was like I walked into it, and I got smashed. And that was the first time, like, you had caught me. That was the cleanest that I think you've caught me. But is even, like, I was mad at myself for allowing myself to walk in, because I knew you were trying to set it up.
Right.
And I walked right into it. But you forget in the course of sparring what you're trying to set up.
Yeah. Well... Yeah, I don't know. It's a weird thing, sparring, because especially with somebody like me and you, because you're more new to it than I am. I've been doing it for a long time, and knowing the level that, because you got better, obviously, you got a lot better. So it's like I have to try harder at a certain point, and then where to draw that line, where to stop is like hard to recognize sometimes. Especially if you hit me like 3 times, I'm like, fuck, I got to step up my game a little bit, and then like maybe I just do it a little too far. And I'm guilty, but obviously that's the risk, and it's fun, but it's just like, it's all mental. It's such a mental,
for sure,
game. And I would say you definitely got a lot better, but it's one of those things that, we haven't done in a while. We need to get back into it as soon as it gets warm here.
Exactly.
We need to, because I think I told you this before when we were actually out there, is like, we took a lot of time off, and I kind of, you forget like such dumb, simple things, like how to move. I had a night where one of my buddies was saying they wanted to spar, and I was like, okay, well, anyway, it kind of boiled down to I could use my left hand on their body. I couldn't really do anything else, but I caught a few more punches than I should have, just because I hadn't done it in a long time. So it's like, it's crazy how quick you kind of, and you do it 3 times, it's like, oh yeah, you get right. It's like riding a bike, you get right back on it. But it is something that needs a little bit more maintenance than I may give it credit for needing, because I feel like I've done it for so long, since I was like in middle school. Like, I think I always think, oh, I got it, it's in there, I'll be fine.
Yeah.
But then you get cracked one time and you're like, man, I need to revisit some of this.
Well, that was the week, I think, the week that I caught you with 3 or 4 good counter
it might have been like the first or second time we did it,
and then after that it changed. I'm like, damn, like I can't even hit him. So then that's when I really started going into, like, just analyze. It came down to, you showed me like, hey, your footing is off when you try to slip or when you try to counter, because you don't have anything behind it because the footwork's off. So it's just something just as small as footwork. The structure of actually throwing a punch comes down to where your feet are at a lot of times.
Yeah. And you're going to start doing the jiu-jitsu with Steve and I, right? Pretty soon.
I hope so.
Yeah, we haven't really been on it. We need to do something in the winter, and jiu-jitsu's...
Winters are almost over.
I know. I have been... Me and Steve got together a few times, but we've been bad about it. I was like sick for a little while, and Lo was sick for a little while, and then it, like after that happened, it just we didn't want to, they have a kid and everything. I don't want to like risk any. Not that it was COVID or anything. It wasn't COVID, but it was like
cooties.
Yeah, and then it's like you get out of the flow of doing it. We did it twice a week, a few weeks, and we were like in it, and it was fun, and kind of that like grace period of being an idiot from like forgetting everything had like kind of run its course. We were like back in the flow of doing it, and then just got out of practice. He has mats out at his place.
Yeah, you were telling me about that.
We'll have to get after it. But
For sure.
Anyway, I've kept you for way too long. I feel like it's probably 2 hours or something ridiculous. So it's like almost 6 o'clock. So appreciate you coming on.
Cool, I appreciate it, brother man.
Do you have anything you want to promote? Or
be sure to follow me on Instagram at Kendrique Coats. I'm sure you'll put the spelling
in the description.
And then YouTube, where I put weekly videos out. I'm coming up on a year. I committed to a year to putting out a video once a week. After that year hits, I'm not sure where I'm going to go from there, but a lot of what I put out is life tips, motivation, and education. So I do see myself pivoting towards the more educational route with the stuff that I'm going to be getting involved in. In addition to that, I'm not sure, like, once that does shift, how much time I will have on the YouTube or Insta page, but those are the two platforms that you all can reach out to me on, ask questions. If any men are listening to this, there's a men's circle that I host once a month. Shoot me a DM. Be more than happy to send you the info.
Awesome. Well, appreciate it, and I'm sure we'll do it again.
So I appreciate it, brother.
Have a good one.